Welcome to the Unraveling Shaltazar podcast. Hello, Jeffrey. How are you today?
I'm doing well, Mark, and how are you?
I'm well. Thank you.
Yeah, always look forward to our Tuesday conversations in Unraveling Shaltazar and see what unfolds. And of course, just to share with the listeners, you and I usually have a bit of a preamble before we start recording, and those are always lots of fun, and I enjoyed spending some time with you doing that. And now we're ready to share the Unraveling Shaltazar discussion with a broader audience.
Right. Yeah, looking forward to it. We just talked about this. It seems like sometimes our topics run according to a theme, and the message that I picked for today is called "Let Spirit Lead the Way," and it seemed it actually kind of follows on our conversation from last week, and it also seems to kind of follow a theme of the season. I mean, we're just before the Easter weekend, and this message kind of has a theme of death and rebirth that kind of winds through it. So that seems kind of appropriate to the energy of the time.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate that theme that appears is not one that is chosen by us. It's not a left brain kind of thing. It's not what's the theme of the month. It's interesting. A lot of marketing gurus will tell you that pick a theme for the month and follow it. And we've made reference to this many times before on this, that being old guys remembering things is sometimes a little bit of a challenge. So I just want listeners to realize that when we are coming up with a theme, it is simply coincidental. It is simply allowing Spirit to lead the way, that we don't sit down and pick messages or have discussions based on that theme. We just allow the theme to pick us, and we are just the willing participants. Right.
Yeah, I mean, peek behind the curtain. I mean, the way this works is I'll get up in the morning and I'll just thumb through some Shaltazar messages, and it might be online, it might be in my notebook, and one will just kind of fall in my lap or jump out at me, and I'll start looking at it, and then that's what happened with this one. I actually had it printed out, and I started reading it, and I was like, oh, that's kind of neat, and then it just turned out to be kind of a connected to the theme from our last conversation. So.
Well, and to sort of peek behind the curtain on my side, and when I get your choice, and it's always the day that we do it, my first reaction is trying to figure out based on the title, and my mind goes to, I don't know if that's what I really want to hear. Gee, I wonder why he chose that one. Mm-hmm. And then when I park my ego and later in the morning listen to it, it's like, wow, that's amazing that he picked that one. So there's something at play here that is beyond just you and I. And right. So every week when you pick one, it's like it's just a perfect one for my Tuesday and what I needed to hear. So just to let listeners know that there is a little bit of magic, not a little bit. There's a lot of magic in this Shaltazar wisdom. And if you kind of play with it, it can really lead you down a path that most likely would be in your highest good.
Right. And that's kind of the theme of this message is being led versus leading, right? I love paradoxes, especially Shaltazar paradoxes, and they're always good for a fabulous paradox, and this message talks a lot about faith, about handing over the rudder of life to them. They say hand the rudder off to us and let us lead the way, and it kind of really gets to the issue of control, right? And how frightened we are as humans to let go of that control and give it over to somebody or something else.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that one of the things that struck me in that message is the emphatic nature that they use the word faith, and of course, just they never pick the words. I pick the words because those the messages come in a very sensory way, in a very clear, cognizant way, and it's my job to translate or transmute or to translate or transcribe that message. So the word faith is my word, but they said it with such emphasis that I got a really deep feeling about that faith, and faith has a connotation, a different connotation to different people, and they also speak about the fact that they're asking us to have faith in something we do not understand or cannot comprehend. Mm-hmm. And so it's a little bit different than some of the religious faith doctrine. This is them admitting that we can't comprehend and we need to trust that which is beyond our comprehension, which I find that was kind of interesting, and that was what I needed today. I needed to really up my faith game a little bit and dial down my control game. And you and I have talked about control and surrender a lot. And in order to be comfortable with surrender, you really got to have a high dose of faith. Otherwise, you're going to want to be in control, because if you don't have that, then fear is going to come up. And
right.
Of course, fear and faith are opposites, right?
Right. Yeah, the little note I wrote down was the great paradox, seizing control by surrendering to faith. So it's the exact opposite of how you think it should be, but we're so we feel so responsible for our lives and everything that's happening around us, and so we feel like, well, we have to be in control of it. We have to take action. We have to get our fingers in it, and sometimes it's it seems like what the message is saying is that's kind of the exact opposite of what you want to do. You want to surrender to spirit, surrender to faith. Like they said, hand the rudder of your life over to us, and in doing so, you regain control of you and who you are.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting because I'm having some experience. You're part of what we're trying to do in a collaborative, cooperative setting. Back in my work days, it tended to be more of a hierarchical kind of thing. I'm sure you've had that experience. And we're playing around with trying to get the messages of Shaltazar, to get this wisdom, to get our content out there. And we're doing it in a very collaborative and cooperative way. And it does require, to a certain degree, that giving up of control. We had a lovely meeting with our team on Friday, and it felt so good because it was very collaborative and there was real faith. There wasn't one person that needed to dominate. And so I get the sense that that's what they're trying to encourage us, is that there's a team available to help us. But a lot of our human experiences have led us to believe that we're in this alone, that you got to take care of yourself, you got to protect. And sure, you may have your family, but you've got some issues in your family, and you're not quite sure of their of how, have they got your best interest in mind? So I think again, there's this paradox of going it alone, separation versus unity, and we've heard that separation versus unity theme many, many times from Shaltazar. And so I think in this faith, they're asking us to move to that unity, that collaboration, that cooperation of not only human, but non-form, non-duality energy. And so it's kind of neat that, like you say, that the paradoxes in this are kind of fascinating.
Yeah. And I mean, the other part of it is that death and rebirth theme, right? And it almost reminded me of the idea of the phoenix, right? Going up in flames and then being reborn as something new. And that kind of is a consistent theme throughout this this message also. And what they're saying must die, if I understand it right, is the mind, right? So it's a choice that they're saying, do you want to trust us to show you the way, or do you want to trust your mind? And so to me, that means that the mind is not our friend when it comes to connecting to spirit.
Yeah, 100%. Interesting. I just want to comment on that death and dying, because as I was listening to it, it was like, whoa, did you overdo that one? It was kind of, it's like, gee, I wish I would have toned that down. Of course, I don't really have a lot of choice when it's coming through. I'm kind of out of the way, and it was pretty stark how they talked about that death and dying over and over again, and it was a bit scary. But then I realized how important what they were saying was, and that closing of one door to open another, and I think how they had to get the message across is use those terms that often we find a bit scary, which is death and dying. With regard to the mind, it's interesting. I recall near the end they talk about when you leave your physical form, it is not your mind that comes with you, which is which I thought was really fascinating. And I think the dying of the mind, or the letting go of the mind they're talking about, is more about the conditioned mind, not the present moment mind, not the mindful mind. I think they're really talking about that unconscious tape recorder of everything that's recorded. And so, and it's a bit tricky because how can we live without our mind? We need our mind. But I think what they're trying to tell us is that if the mind becomes more present moment focused, and we don't allow the past and the anticipation of the future to be ruling what our decisions are, which is the mind that I think they're encouraging us to let go of, and the mind simply becomes the mindful mind, then the mindful mind takes its instructions from spirit, from heart of hearts, from the feeling consciousness. And so there's so many layers in this one. This would be an interesting one for us to do a deep dive on. But it's really, if you take it on the surface and you talk about the mind dying, one could find it rather difficult to comprehend. But I think the best way I can explain it, like I say, I'm reiterating myself, is the letting go of the mind that is focusing on the past and future and being in the present moment mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's like the mind is a tool that you need to interpret your connection to spirit, right? So you're feeling, your heart is where spirit speaks to you, but you have to be able to take that feeling and translate it, like you do with Shaltazar, into something that you can verbalize and understand, and that seems to be that quieting of the mind needs to take place before you can have that experience of understanding, perhaps.
100%. I think as you described it, that's exact. By the way, there's a couple of times today as you were saying something, it was like he's reading my mind. But of course, that doesn't surprise me. But by doing so, it's because you're sort of you are definitely in the present moment. We're in a certain resonance. Having done this as often as we do, there's this certain resonance. But that example of how I channel is right on, because what is coming out of my mouth, hopefully, is sort of intelligent words, but I am not getting it from my preconceived notions. I'm not getting it from my conditioned beliefs. It is coming through in the moment. And as a matter of fact, you aptly pointed out that sometimes when I channel, there seems to be a little bit of the voice of Jeffrey Eisen, and you can notice other times when I'm channeling where it's all Shaltazar's voice. And the times where it seems to be a little bit of the voice of Jeffrey Eisen. It's where my mind is not in that still point. My mind has not been dialed back. My mind is sort of, the conditioned mind is jumping ahead of what Shaltazar is feeding me. In order for anyone to channel, you really have to be in that moment, and you have to be patient, and you have to connect in a very sensory way, and then simply be the translator or the transcriber of that sensory experience. So that's a perfect example of what they're encouraging us to do more of the time. Stop the mental chatter, be in the moment, and simply allow what comes through from spirit in a sensory way to be interpreted, to be transcribed by the mind without judgment, without censoring, right? And that's kind of difficult because we were taught from a young age to censor, to watch what you say, watch your mouth,
right.
Don't say the wrong thing. I don't know about you, but I was children should be seen and not heard.
Right.
So from a young age, we're sort of really cautious as to what comes out of our mouth, and as a consequence, the mind gets the job of being the judge, jury, censorer. And I think what they're telling us, if we want spirit to lead the way, is you have to let go of that mind and simply allow it to be the translator and transcriber.
Right. Yeah. One of the lines in here that I highlighted is, again, they repeat a common theme that change is not an option, that we are going through change and it's going to happen. And to allow change to come into your life, you need to let go of the mind and open up to spirit to lead you. By doing so, and this is kind of a fascinating thing to me, I thought, it says, by doing so, your mind will be recalibrated to operate in a new way. It will be reprogrammed in a way that brings more compassion, more empathy, more kindness, and more understanding to your world. The old beliefs that have resulted in hatred, bigotry, fear, competition, and persecution will die off and be replaced with a kinder and gentler way. So not only are we allowing spirit to lead us, but our DNA is basically being reprogrammed and reformatted to a whole different way of approaching life, and that's remarkable, I think.
Absolutely, and it's interesting. It's interesting you say that, because I notice myself with a lot of people all around me complaining about what's happening with COVID and how governments and institutions are handling it. I have a little higher level of tolerance, realizing that this is uncharted territory, and I certainly wouldn't want to be the person making these decisions. And I believe that that's exactly what you're talking about, having channeled Shaltazar, having been on this journey for as long as I have. There's a compassion, an understanding, a kindness, a tolerance that I never had before. And if anyone knew me in my early years, pre-50, I was the total opposite of that. I would be the one that would be ranting and raving, and they don't understand, and all of those things. And so how can I be this person who is more understanding when I used to be a person who had no patience to try and understand the other point of view? It is exactly what Shaltazar is saying in this. We reprogram the unconscious mind in such a way that my tape recorder, my automatic way of response, is different than it used to be when I was coming more from separation. So having tapped in to spirit, I'm responding in a more spirit-centered, heart-centered way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and kind of going back to what you said before about the we were talking about getting mind out of the way, right? In a way, COVID has been like the I don't know if you want to call it a pause button, but like I think of this image from one of the Harry Potter movies where they were in a room, and one of the professors released a what were they? Cornish pixies, little blue things, and they were in a cage, and they started flying all over the room. And I think it was Hermione cast a spell, and everything just sort of like stopped, right? Everything just kind of was suspended in suddenly in slow motion. And it's almost like that was one of the benefits of COVID, I think, is, we were charging ahead, with our left brain going 100 miles an hour, doing and working and, earning and spending and buying and whatever we were doing. And then it was all of a sudden, it just, boom, it just stopped like that. It kind of we were suddenly just floating. And that pause to our busyness of our left brain has seemed to allow a lot of us to kind of maybe connect to that right brain more and that spirit side more. I don't know.
100%. Think about this. When we go to travel, there's this thing called mandatory quarantine. And it's kind of fascinating that depending on where you are, whether it's 5 days, 10 days, 17 days, 14 days, whatever it is, you are forced. I know someone I used to work with, he got a gig down in the Grand Caymans, and he had to spend 14 days by himself in a hotel room, and they bring him food. And it's sort of like, wow, what a reset, what an opportunity. What an opportunity, because he happened to be on a spiritual journey. And it was kind of amazing that the universe is giving us an opportunity for this self-reflection, this disconnection from the busy world. So I think you're absolutely right. That's why Shaltazar is saying we're in the energy of the great potential for change, where no change is not an option. This isolation, this quarantine, all of those things are opportunities for us to slow down the mind that Shaltazar says needs to die as we know it, and be reborn in a new way, in a quieter, kinder, more pensive, more present moment, mindful way.
Right. Great message. It was a good one. I encourage folks to check it out and see if you have similar insights to the ones we had. So.
And I love sharing those insights. Thank you so much for picking it today. It was one that helped me through the day, and I love doing these things with you. So thank you so much, Mark.
Thank you. We'll talk to you next time.
Excellent. Love and light to everyone.
If you have any questions about the Master Teachings of Shaltazar, we invite you to submit them to Jeffrey@jeffreyeisen.com, and we will make your question the topic of a future episode.